Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So my name is Min, and I work at the foundation, and I focus on ecosystem growth. Very excited today to bring you this panel about financial inclusion. Before we get started, I'd like to just ask each of the panelists to quickly introduce yourselves and what you work on. Benedetto, can I start with you? We'll work down this way. Yeah.
Thank you, Min. And my name is Benedetto Biondi. I am the CEO of Folks Finance. Folks Finance is the largest DeFi app on Algorand. We have built a DeFi hub that allows our users to trade, liquid stake, do lending and borrowing, and as well leverage trading. So that's pretty it, what we do.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Min, for the opportunity. My name is Abhinav Sinha. I started Echo here in India in September of 2007. It's been 16 years, so what we started with and what we do today is probably a fine-tuned version of what we were doing in 2007. We started with the idea of bringing banking and financial services to a very large number of Indians. I'm happy to share that over the last 16 years, we've touched the lives of close to about 60 million people here in India. Thank you.
Hi, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Ashish J. Thacker. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been active in Africa for over 27 years, and I'm the group CEO of Y9, and Y9 is a digital bank trying to create meaningful financial inclusion and digital inclusion in emerging markets, but particularly in Africa.
Awesome. And so today's panel is about financial inclusion. How do we bring financial access to the next billion? So I think what I want to do, and what would be helpful, is to maybe define financial inclusion. What do we mean by financial inclusion? So the World Bank says that financial inclusion is where individuals and businesses have access to useful and affordable financial products and services delivered in a responsible and sustainable way. I think if you can kind of break that down a little bit, I would say it's two main components. One is accessibility, right? Like the ability to access the financial system through a bank account, and I think the UN defines it a transactional account. So the ability for you to have an account to store money, to be able to receive and send money. I think that the second piece is really about participating in the financial system, right? So once you have this account, you can then start using it. So with savings, investments, insurance, et cetera. And it's really about reducing the cost and increasing the availability of that to the people. And as I think Matt mentioned in the intro, the latest, we've made great progress here, but we have 1.4 billion unbanked globally. And so I think, Ashish, I kind of want to start with you because Y9 has done some amazing, incredible work on the ground in Tanzania, bringing access to the users. We'd love to hear about kind of what you've worked on and this point around bringing access to the users.
Thank you, Min. So, you're absolutely right. Tanzania is a population of 70 million people. Africa's almost 1.5 billion people. 90% are unbanked or underbanked. And this remains a huge challenge. And on the other hand, we've got mobile telephony, we've got 4G infrastructure across all of our cities. Even in the most rural areas, there's 4G connectivity. Believe it or not, there's even 5G connectivity. But 90% of customers are still using 2G and 3G handsets, right? To solve meaningful financial inclusion, we do need to create digital banking. But for digital banking to work, we need digital inclusion. And this is where 4G handsets are missing, right? So we, as Y9, created an ecosystem approach, which was a membership model where we say, pay us a very small joining fee and a small daily fee. And we give people a brand new 4G smartphone with our Y9 bank account, with our AI credit scoring and decisioning engine, with 5,000 free ebooks to boost digital literacy, with Para Wallet built into our Y9 bank account, And 100 days of mapping their score, we start offering other types of asset finance, consumer finance, MSME finance, bank assurance, savings. So it becomes literally banking the unbanked and the underbanked. And we believe that by providing this access to capital in a meaningful way with our own balance sheet to start with, will create a huge positive social impact in terms of really generating the economies and stimulating the economies by creating access to finance, which currently does not exist.
Yeah.
So we've used a real grassroots approach, and we're, in the last 3 weeks, we've grown at about 56%. So it's now beginning to scale after 14 months of being revenue generating.
Right, and just real quick, you also target the marginalized communities as well, right, in terms of bringing access. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we really target the mass market, right? The real unbanked and the underbanked. I mean, coming back to the initial challenge of smartphone penetration is, you know, everybody, their earning is $100 to $150 a month. How do they afford a $100 to $150 handset? And that's what we're creating, that affordability element too. At the same time, for example, we've partnered with FMCG players to provide access to finance for inventory finance, for working capital for small traders. Coca-Cola, for example, has 140,000 retailers in Tanzania alone. They don't get any payment terms, they're not banked, they don't have a credit score, and financial institutions have traditionally used the excuse of lack of data as a big issue, and it's a real issue. But at the same time, we need to kind of create that data.
Yeah.
So we're using our own data score. We've put our servers in the telecom operators. We've got the credit reference bureau. We're generating all that data, but at the same time, we are really investing in these economies, in these communities, and that's what we believe will create that massive positive social impact.
Every time I hear your story, it just reminds me of how much work goes into bringing access to, you know, to people on the ground. It's amazing. It's amazing. Abhinav, I wanted to maybe turn the conversation to the second part of financial inclusion that I talked about, which is participation in the banking and the financial systems. You've built a network here in India that has really tremendously impacted millions of people. Can you talk about Echo and what you've built here?
Thanks. Absolutely happy to share our story in as brief time as possible. You know, we started from the same problem statement, Ashish, that you mentioned, and in 2007, if I remember, try and recollect. What we used to very often hear that India has about 100 million people who had bank accounts, and we are about 1.4 billion right now, right? And I'm happy to share that today. The Honorable Prime Minister very often shares that we now have closer to about 900 million people who have bank accounts, right? Now, what I'm happy to share is that these bank accounts have not been opened at bank branches, right? These bank accounts have been opened at really small neighborhood stores who have now been put together as a part of a network, have been trained to help people open bank accounts. That is really where we started off, right? We were probably the first organization here in India which opened the first bank account of a retail store. And it happened here in Delhi, and the process was very different than what happens today, right? We used to have a paper form, people would fill the form, we would sign it, we would courier it to the bank. God knows, I don't even recollect, probably 15 days later, we would try and find that customer who had opened the bank account, let them know that there is a bank account for them to use. That was probably 2007. In 2023, I'm happy to share that when a customer walks into a retail outlet today, as of today, right now, somewhere in India must be happening, they put in their biometric, which is again Aadhaar, and I'm sure the last panel spoke about it. They walk out with a bank account in less than 2 minutes here in India, and amongst many participants and operators, Echo is one such entity which participates, and I'm happy to share that we've contributed this journey from India going from 100 million bank accounts to now getting closer to 1 billion bank accounts. Now, after opening bank accounts, now the very interesting thing about India is that I do believe that closer to about 80% of Indians continue to earn in cash. The reason for that is about 80% of the GDP is getting generated out of informal small businesses, right? Yep. And so it was hard to get a bank account. Now the levels of difficulty has really fallen. It's easy to get a bank account now. And once you've got your wages in cash, today there is, I don't know, maybe a network of we run a network of about 500,000 such micro entrepreneurs who help distribute financial services. I think across the industry we are at about 3 million such micro entrepreneurs who help others get financially included. And as soon as you get your wages in cash, you can absolutely go to a neighborhood grocery store and put your cash in a bank account, save it absolutely safely, and you can be in any part of the country, put in your biometric, again a fingerprint, and take your money out. Now, this is exactly what probably we imagined in 2007. There have been many variations. Every 3 years, the policy has changed. Every 3 years, the regulations have changed. Every 3 years, the technology has changed. We started from a feature phone. Today, we are absolutely smartphone enabled. We were on ink, we were on paper. There is no ink, there is no paper, there is no feature phones today in India, right? Not that the consumers who are getting themselves some of these bank accounts certainly have feature phones, but many such services are getting enabled for them, at the micro entrepreneur who's kind of providing these financial inclusion services. So it's definitely been a very long, hard journey, but I'm again happy to share that 500,000 micro entrepreneurs assisted over the last 16 years, now getting closer to about 60 million people. We probably touch the lives of about anywhere between 4 to 5 million people every month.
Yeah.
Someone's opening a bank account, someone's buying an insurance, someone's doing a cash in, someone's doing cash out, someone's remitting.
Yeah.
Many such things are happening.
I mean, that's 500,000 merchants that somebody can go into a store and do one of these things that they want to do.
Absolutely.
Send money, buy insurance, et cetera,
Absolutely.
right? I mean, that's very, I mean, it's tremendous. And India, I think having the density and giving you, I mean, it took years, but it's pretty remarkable for sure. So I want to bring in blockchain into this conversation, of course. We've made some great progress over the last couple of decades in terms of bringing the unbanked into the banking system. I'm a little biased, but I do think that we're at the cusp of another wave, of really having technology push the inclusion for us. And so, Benedetto, you have been building decentralized financial platforms, products, for the last 4 to 5 years. So I'd love for you to just talk about, one, what you've built, but also just kind of, how do you think about accessibility in building your platform?
Yeah, thank you. So for us, it's slightly different because we see the power of the technology relying on a blockchain like Algorand, which is trustless, permissionless, and you can build amazing tools in a very fast and cheap way in terms of transaction, of course. So when we started Folks, for us, the idea was like, by the way, my background is from a software house that was partner of Algorand already from 3 years ago. And we were like, what we are going to build on Algorand in terms of decentralized finance? So we thought of a lending protocol first. So the idea was that Algorand is fit for purpose for being the blockchain for application for financial institution. So for us, the idea, okay, maybe if we're going to build a lending protocol, which is, let's say, the first milestone for banking, it's going to be worth, a bet that later on can integrate with financial systems. And that's where we started. Then as soon as I started to dive into the technologies and then the way that smart contracts will interoperate each other, I understand the real power of DeFi. Because in decentralized finance, you can access without having any KYC, just a wallet. So the accessibility is pure as soon as you have an internet connection and a smartphone, which of course is also a step to cross sometime. But as soon as you have that, then there is no limit. I love how you can zap between a protocol to another and having different services. I want to swap, I can use TinyMan. Then I want to lend, I can use Folks Finance, and no one is going to say me no. Doesn't matter where I am around the world, and doesn't matter my background. And also the most beautiful part for me of decentralized finance is that the protocol never look at who you are and never look at your size of your wallet. So it doesn't matter you have $1, doesn't matter you have 1 billion, you are still treated the same. The interest you are going to earn are the same. So it's a very big change of paradigm here, because the way that traditional finance works, it's well known that it's always going to treat better the richer than the most powerful men, right? Women, of course. But in DeFi, this is not possible. So because the smart contracts are pure code that are on the blockchain and you are going to use it even without a user interface, it's purely a connection with a wallet, so anyone can use it, anyone can perform the operation they want to, and in a free way. So that's for me accessibility.
Yeah, I mean, so I feel like you've said a couple different things. One is that the platform, basically anybody can, we don't care who you are. And you can access this platform. You can do a lot of different things. The other thing I think you said is smart contracts. Can you talk a little bit about how does, and I think this is what Stacy was talking about in terms of programmable money, programmable contracts, right? Can you talk about how smart contracts, for example, in the cases of what, Ashish and Abhinav are trying to build with their financial products, how did the blockchain help them achieve what they want to achieve with the...
So, first of all, let's maybe clarify. The smart contracts is not that they are smart. They are just lines of code that are going to do forever what they are built to do. So if I write a contract that says every week send 10 algo from my account to Min's account, forever he will do this transfer until I have money, of course. But this is the idea of how they works. The very powerful things of the smart contract for me is the composability. And that's how I see that in the future, application like the one that we spoke about can interoperate with permissionless smart contracts in decentralized finance. So for us, we always think that building decentralized finance is building an infrastructure that later is going to be plugged into the traditional financial system. And of course, for doing that, we need middle step, like you are doing, for example. And these then, at this point, will allow, let's say, who didn't have a smartphone can have now a smartphone and then interoperate in a permissionless way with financial tools, which can be of any type. But at that point, you are going to connect in an easy way fiat currencies from many countries that in most of the time, they usually are cash in e-money that later on can be used in a permissionless way to do different operation in DeFi. So that's for me the real powerful of how those two things are going to be interconnected and then bring DeFi to the next wave.
Yeah, it's all, DeFi is not an island by itself, right? You want it to be, but you can't because it really needs to be connected back into the traditional world. And then Ashish, I think when I think DeFi and when I hear what you're doing in terms of giving your users these loans, these micro loans, one of the things that DeFi, specifically Folks Finance, they've built a borrow-lend platform. Anybody can put asset into the pool and borrow against it. Does any of that resonate with you as you think about what you're trying to do with your user base?
Absolutely. I think what Benedetto said is spot on, where when you think about, just the population, Abhinav touched on this in terms of India's scale, Africa's scale similarly. We're split in 54 different markets, but still collectively we're over 1.5 billion people almost, right? And growing. So when we think about the ability to scale and really, really reach the masses, it's not going to be only through our own balance sheet. I think creating the platform that we're creating the ability to have smartphones in everybody's hands as a stepping stone, I think that's when you start plugging in the rest of the ecosystem to play in. And I think that's why we're really, really proud and excited to have Algorand as a core partner from the beginning of our journey, that this enables things like Folks Finance and Eco and other types of players within the ecosystem to plug in, to take advantage of the base that we are creating. Y9, and this is why I'm actually really, really happy that Algorand has created the Impact Summit, which is the first that it's done, and I'm happy it's here, and I'm hoping we're going to see you guys in Africa very
I
soon.
think she should offer to host us.
But the thing is, I think, we were built on the principles of my spiritual leader, which is Morari Bapu, whose teaching is truth, love, and compassion. And I think if we're really going to be able to live up to that and scale this, I think it's about creating the enabling ecosystem to plug other players in that our customer base can really tap into and scale with. We have a vision, which we're very clear with, that we want to bank 100 million customers of unbanked and underbanked in Africa. And I believe we're on track to do so. It may take us 5, 7, 10 years, but we'll get there. And I think then plugging in the rest of the ecosystem is the only way we're going to provide them with the level of services and scale that they're looking for.
Yeah, and the level of participation,
Exactly.
right? And the engagement with the financial systems. Yeah. I think, Abhinav, as I'm thinking about the blockchain and how it's impacting, products that are being built, I can't, of course, not mention the Aadhaar system in India, the identity system, which is, I would say the golden standard for a digital identity. It's not decentralized, of course, but I do think it showcases just the power of it. And so I want to kind of get your perspective on you being here while it's being rolled out and building a product right alongside that identity system. How important is identity in your view, for financial inclusion as an extension of our last panel? I want to get your feedback.
I think it's the cornerstone, was the most important things, right? Like I mentioned, we started off, the first product that we wanted to offer was to open, help people get themselves bank account at a neighborhood store, right? And the process was probably 15 days.
15 days?
It probably was 15 days.
Yeah.
The very first version that we came out with was 15 days. The thing is, the user experience, as much however you try it, we could only deliver 15 days, right? And I still remember just a story to share here, that even after delivering a bank account in 15 days at a neighborhood store, we were so excited as young entrepreneurs that we ended up writing to the central bank here in India saying that, we just want to let you know there is a startup out of Delhi, we do this, and we just want you to know about us, right? This is as naive as we could have been. We ended up writing to, I think, the deputy governor of the central bank here in India. And what were we expecting, right? We were expecting people to say, hey, great job done, right? But what did we get? We got 5 inspectors from the central bank reviewing every step of our process, right? It taught us a lot of things, right? My background was not financial services, didn't know what compliances are all about. And that's about 16 years old. I don't do those things now, right? But I think those 5 inspectors were there to figure out whether the process of KYC is right or not, right? And the fact that in 16 years there is an Aadhaar, and I'm happy to share that it does take 30 seconds to open a bank account here in India today, right?
30 seconds.
30 seconds. 30 seconds. I'm not kidding. 30 seconds. And I think that's the power of identity, right? Wow. And Smriti also had mentioned about this fantastic app called Digi Yatra, that some of us are using it. There are many use cases of Aadhaar today. From my company's perspective, we use Aadhaar for opening of a bank account. Mm-hmm. There are close to about $2 to $3 billion worth of cash out gets processed in India thanks to Aadhaar, where I'm missing the exact amount of direct benefit transfer that the state governments or the federal government ends up doing every month. And a very large portion of that benefit transfers that goes to beneficiaries are actually getting cashed out at networks like ours. And I think the portion of benefit transfers that get cashed out at networks like ours is about $3 to $4 billion a month.
Wow.
And Echo participates in it. Almost every such transaction is happening by a presentation of a thumb impression, right? Again, Aadhaar. Yeah. So every bank account is opened with an Aadhaar. A cash out, because the Aadhaar is mapped to the bank account, you are able to cash out. Very interestingly, 900 million people have opened bank accounts. By the way, debit cards have not been distributed, right? And it is still a transactional account.
Yeah.
How is it a transactional account without a debit card with people having feature phones? Biometric, Aadhaar again, right?
Yeah.
It is absolutely the gold standard. It is absolutely the gold standard. It has increased. If not for Aadhaar, I think we would have accomplished it. I don't think so the scale would be here.
Yeah.
And I also don't believe that the process would be as smooth as it is at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it was a critical part of
It
you
was,
being
it
able
was.
to scale, I mean, from 15 minutes to 30 seconds. I mean,
15
granted,
days.
Oh, sorry, 15 days,
15
right.
days to 30
Right,
seconds.
15 days.
15 days to 30
I can't process that level of
I'm
range.
waiting 5 months for my bank account. So I'm waiting 5 months for my bank account.
Certainly, absolutely.
You are. In where?
I better not say.
I mean, it's remarkable, yeah.
It is remarkable, absolutely.
Yesterday, I think Dr. Sharma, who I think you explained to me, was he led the charge of implementing Aadhaar in India,
Yes.
talked about how he's fascinated by the blockchain technology, and that is so encouraging to hear that somebody who implemented the system in India thinks that there is great potential for blockchain to further enhance that system. You know, I just think your story really exemplifies how important identity is in building a process. You can't scale with 15 days. You know?
Absolutely, you can't.
It's incredible. Okay, so Benedetto, I want to get your feedback on this. Having heard the challenges and the thinking, what do you think is like a trend in blockchain that is really going to drive financial inclusion?
So specifically for decentralized finance, I think that there are, let's say, two major parts that we need to solve. And the first one is the user experience. As today, DeFi apps are very difficult to use. Most of the time you need to educate your user. For example, we do as well with the Folks Academy. But nevertheless, we always try to make the user experience as smooth as possible. And for us, for example, one of the strategy was that we wanted to build a DeFi hub where a user can do most of the services and in a simple way that he can have on a centralized exchange, but using DeFi trustless tools. So building the hub, we saw that was very appreciated because someone may join the app to do liquid staking with Gialgo, but then he end up learning how to take a loan and use it for its purposes. So let's say the first part that we need to solve is an easy way of interact with DeFi apps.
Right.
So make it as simple as possible that you don't need education. Let's say that is the target. But it is a very new technology, right? It is a very new industry. So it is normal to have those gaps that we are solving it if we think that DeFi 3 years ago was nothing, and now it's a big thing. And how much evolved the apps since the inception to now, it's incredible. And I really think that the traditional finance evolves in a much slower speed. So at some point we will be in a much better place that people will be able to use DeFi apps in a very simple way compared to traditional finance. And this is also one point that is very important, is because we listen to community. So that's very there's a very big difference between the standard fintech and DeFi, because we have community which are open to discuss, we have forums, and we always listen to our community. Anytime there is a suggestion, we read it, whether we think it's important to implement, then we start. So that's how we keep evolving and improving the product. But the second, more important, or at the same level, let's say, it's the onboarding of real-world assets into DeFi. Because as for now, of course, decentralized finance is mostly tools that are used for crypto trading, right? It's known. But in the future, as I said before, DeFi is just an infrastructure that can plug into any tokenized assets. And on Algorand, we see how many we have, right?
Yeah.
So I really believe that, let's say, my father will be using Folks Finance as soon as he will have an asset that he can use on top of it, which can be a real estate tokenized, a bill tokenized, anything. And this will be then bringing Volksfinance, but any DeFi app, to a much larger use case. Like, I'm going to use Volks because I can trade with different assets that are from the real world. So that's merging the gap between crypto and
Yeah, I have to say this idea of being able to tokenize assets and then to bring them on chain and to be able to collateralize against it is, I think, one of the most exciting things, because you can collateralize it around products and services that were previously not a part of the financial
you make
system.
liquid what it was in liquid. So
Right.
it's very powerful.
It's so powerful, and then it allows you, for example, to give more credit, right? It allows you to sell more insurance, it's like a virtuous cycle that I think really could drive it. And then I think on the education point, or the user experience point, there's so many pieces to it. There's the bringing the traditional user into the digital world. There's bringing the digital user into the Web3 world, and then there's just purely improving the user experience in Web3, right? So there's so many layers to it, and so I agree with you. We're in the early stages. So I want to maybe end this session with a question for Ashish and Abhinav. What do you think needs to happen in crypto or in blockchain in order for the traditional finance and the financial inclusion in the traditional sense to benefit from that technology? What do you think is missing? What do you think has to happen?
So I think, Min, you touched on it. You said, like, we're at this beginning where things are going to be truly, we're at that cusp, right? And I really do believe that. And I think the fact that we're sitting in an impact summit, which is hosted by you guys, shows that there's a lot of thoughtfulness going into this. So I do believe, I think it's going to be, truly disruptive in terms of what's going to happen next. I think what's important is governments are kept in the loop and are educated constantly. Like you said, giving a notification and then having that kind of thing happen that many years ago. The advantage is now so many countries have progressed in so many different ways, where I kind of insist to our regulators to come and see us every 1 or 2 months, so just to make sure they understand what we're doing, because it's so different, it's kind of not been seen before. But at the same time, we can get their inputs in terms of what they're most concerned about, so we can address them well in advance. So I think public sector engagement is going to be absolutely critical. I think at the same time, it's meeting, getting these technologies aligned at the right time, so getting that foundation laid, be it with the devices, and then putting in the necessary applications, learning from other markets that have done it successfully, and strengthening it. And in our case, we're in Tanzania, we're launching Uganda in the next few months, and we're seeing it's a complete different ballgame. It's a different world, right? Even though they're neighboring countries. So you can't generalize an approach either. So I think it's really tailoring it to local needs and in a local manner.
Yeah.
Min, as far as Echo is concerned, we are a 100% by definition Web 2.0 company. We started 16 years back, right? So I've spent, thanks to Anil, Nikhil, I've spent a lot of time, not only as an individual trying to understand blockchain as a technology, but also trying to figure out genuine, impactful use cases within my own business.
Yeah.
And how could we really, so one is, as an entrepreneur, and then this is like 16 years, we've built a lot of stuff, right? So it's important to first of all recognize that decentralization will certainly help in lot more scale than what we have probably managed in the last 16 years, right? And I think that certainly needs a lot of education. Ashish talked about from a government and regulators point of view. I think even from an entrepreneur's point of view, right?
Yeah.
We need to understand how this is going to help us, right?
Yeah.
And maybe it's easy for people who just get started with Web3, but certainly for entrepreneurs like ourselves, I think it's not that easy, right? We've
Yeah.
got to rethink of our business models all over again.
Yeah.
But once you kind of start to appreciate that as an entrepreneur, I think then we really have to dig in and look for many use cases, right? And I think Echo is in that journey. We've certainly crossed step 1, which is I certainly believe, and therefore I'm here. that there is a lot more stuff that we can do to democratize, decentralize, make sure the financial services is accessible to a lot more people if we start to build certain parts of our business on Algorand. And we are looking for a lot of use cases. It goes all the way from whether it's identity, whether it's credit, whether it's transaction, whether it's interoperability between Echo and we are a very matured industry, whether entrepreneurs, customers want to shift from Echo to somebody else or want to go from one operator to the other operator. There are many use cases that we can solve for. So I think that's the journey that we are in, and I think we'll probably like anything, we'll fail a few times and we'll start to learn and make that happen. So I think certainly, just to reiterate what Ashish mentioned, I think work certainly needs to happen at the regulators level. And my sense is in India, I think a lot of it is already happening.
Yeah.
There is a central bank innovation lab. Maybe it's tough for Echo to participate, but I do see a lot of startups participate in those kind of forums. And so I think there are certainly forums getting created where some of these things can get experimented. Regulators come look at these pretty much the way they saw us about 16 years back. People can look at some of the initiatives that's happening right now. And so I think there's work happening there at that end. I think entrepreneurs like ours really have to think through as to how we can kind of change our business. Try a few times. I think we'll fail a few few of our attempts. I think we just need to keep going at it, and I'm sure we'll figure out the right use cases. Once there is a right use case, let's say if Echo or one of my peers, we discover it, scale's bound to happen then thereafter. Yeah.
What I appreciate about this conversation is no matter which angle you're coming at it from, it's all about educating. It's all about like helping people understand the real value, right? Like whether it's with the governments, whether it's for the entrepreneurs to think about what can I build, whether, it's, even though Benedetto, you're crypto native, you still need to educate the users and make sure that they know they have that better user experience. I just appreciate that we're converging, even though we're coming at it from different points of views, we know we need each other, to really make this work. So I love that. I love that. We have a couple of minutes in case there are any questions from the audience. Although I do know we're between you and lunch, so if there are no questions, that's okay too. All right. Well then, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.